Thanks, Bridget.
I was just sending a message to record it.
Hey, Liza, I'm gonna make Shauna a co-host as well, just as a
A
backup.
good idea. Yeah, just in case something happens.
Yeah. Oh, it looks like you need to make her a co-host.
Yeah, I can do it.
Yeah.
Hold on. Give me 1 second.
All right, we should have a few more people joining us. So we'll give it a few more minutes and then we will start. I will be moderating the conversation. And I'm so excited to be here today with the team at Fermata Reads.
You should be a co-host now. I think I adjusted it.
Thank you so much. All right, we'll give it a couple more minutes. Yeah, isn't this background incredible?
It looks pretty
Yes.
real. That's real.
I thought you were there.
So real.
Oh, we have another person.
Hello, Amy. Oh, and Kyla or Kayla.
We can always send the recording out to anyone who may have missed it today as well.
Yeah, sounds good.
Okay. Hi, Julie.
Hey.
Hi, Melanie. All right. I think we can start at 5:35. We'll give people 5 minutes to join, and if no one else joins, then we will go ahead.
Sounds good. We have the recording anyways, so if anyone wants to revisit it, I'll be.
All right. Well, I wanted to thank everyone for coming today. I'm so excited to share this space for our first FoundHER talk of the year with the team behind Fermata Reads, Lizette, Bridget, Zoel, and Letty. I will start by sharing a little bit more about what we do at the Kendra Scott Women's Entrepreneurial Leadership Institute, and then a bit more about the FoundHER program. And then from there, I'll pass the mic over to the Fermata Reads team where they can dive into their story, how Fermata was created, and some of the obstacles that they've overcome as female leaders. And then I'll ask a few more questions and we'll open it up for Q&A. All right, so the Kendra Scott Women's Entrepreneurial Leadership Institute, I'll now be referring to it as WELI for short, because it is kind of a mouthful. Our mission is to strengthen the next generation of courageous, creative women leaders who will change the world in business and beyond. While it is called the Women's Entrepreneurial Leadership Institute, we are open to all identities. The Institute was founded on 3 pillars: empowering students to discover their personal values and leadership styles, building their community by giving them access to a network where they can grow their team or find a mentor or connect with like-minded entrepreneurs. And then we also equip them with resources they need to be able to grow their business. WELI is an interdisciplinary initiative. We have 5 on-campus partners at UT. We have the Cockrell School of Engineering, the College of Fine Arts, the Macomb School of Business, the College of Natural Sciences, and the School of Undergraduate Studies. And then the FoundHER program is basically each month, the FoundHER program recognizes one company each month throughout the year. So there's 12 companies that are featured in one calendar year. Through resources, events, and marketing, we're able to connect our FoundHERs to other FoundHERs in the community, as well as our greater KSWELI community. It began in May of 2020, and since then we've highlighted a different female identifying founder each month across the UT ecosystem. And to this date, that is 52 amazing, fearless women leaders. The goal of the FoundHER program is about representation. So we believe that if you can see her, you can be her. The application starts in the fall for anyone who might be interested in becoming a future FoundHER. The program is open to all people that are part of the UT ecosystem, whether you're a student or an alumni. Well, now I will pass the virtual mic over to the Fermata Reads team. So the team behind Fermata Reads, they're going to share their stories, some obstacles they've overcome as female leaders, a little bit about their business. Fermata Reads amalgamates music and engineering in an entrepreneurial space by manufacturing synthetic bassoon reeds through a chemical process, which has never been done before. All right, ladies, I will let you take it away.
Thank you so much. I think the best thing we can do is to just go around and introduce ourselves. Does that sound good to y'all? Okay. On the order of my screen, I see Zoe, Bridget, and Allie. So do you want to go in that order? All right. Just introduce yourselves, name, what you do, how you contribute to the team, anything like that.
Do you want to go first, Lizette?
Oh yeah, I guess I can go first. My name is Lizette Long. I am an undergraduate student at UT Austin, and I am currently double majoring in electrical engineering and jazz piano. And I am the CEO of Fermata Reads. I am passing the mic to Zoe.
I'm Zoe Wong. I'm the COO of Fermata Reads. I double majored in aerospace engineering and Mandarin at UT Austin. However, I graduated as of May 2022, and now I am a PhD student at Georgia Tech for aerospace engineering. It is a pleasure to see you all here. And now I'll pass on the virtual mic to Bridget.
Hi, I'm Bridget Fitzgerald, and I'm the Chief Marketing Officer of Fermata Reads. I'm a doctoral bassoonist in the School of Music, so I study bassoon performance, and I'm getting a Doctorate of Musical Arts in that. I did my master's here at UT, and I did my undergrad degree in math and bassoon performance at Vanderbilt University. And I love this overlap of engineering, math, and music that Fermata brings to the table. All right, I'm going to pass the mic to Allie.
Hi, my name's Letty Smith, but I like to go by Allie. I'm originally from North Carolina, and I'm the CFO for Fermata Reeds, that's Chief Financial Officer. And I'm also like the chemical specialist. So I got my undergrad degree from the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill, where I majored in chemistry. And now I am a third-year PhD student at the University of Texas at Austin in the chemistry department. So my role is CFO, but I also do a lot of the chemical processing steps to make our synthetic bassoon reeds. And just thank you for joining us today.
Yeah, great job, y'all. Yeah, so our team is really, really diverse. We all have a lot of different disciplines, but the thing we all share in common is that we both have a deep love of music and science. And that's kind of how our project came to be. I can talk a little bit about our origin story. It's a little complicated, but it's got a thread, a common thread. So Fermata Reeds started with an idea. The idea can be traced to the former Dean Sharon Wood, who is now the provost. She actually plays bassoon, and she was telling my boss at the time, Dr. Scott Evans at Texas Invention Works, that the bassoon reeds were very fragile and they break and they didn't have a very long lifespan. So Scott took this idea to me, who was a staff member at the Makerspace, which is inside the engineering building. And he proposed this idea to me and I accepted it. And that's kind of how we got the ball rolling. We slowly accumulated team members. So I started with asking my sister for help. And then obviously none of us play bassoon, so we had to ask a professional. So there comes Bridget. And then lastly, the last core member of our team was because our original venture failed. And that's when we had to start redirecting to chemistry. And that's when we added Allie. Zoe, do you want to talk about the obstacles of 3D printing?
Yes, I can. So just to get a feel of the audience, if you can, virtually or physically, how many of you have heard of a bassoon? You can just raise your hand if you have. All right, so like only a fraction of the people have. All right, so for those who don't know, a bassoon is a member of the woodwind instrument family, and Bridget can go into this much more deeper. I think she's actually going to bring her bassoon out. Thank you, Bridget. That is a bassoon. Do you want to play something, Bridget, so they can hear the beauty of the bassoon?
Oh, do you want to hold up the reed so they can also see like
Well,
what we're working on? Yeah.
So this is our instrument's mouthpiece. It's called a reed, and we can talk a little bit more about this later, but this is the equivalent of the product that we're making. It's necessary to make sound on the instrument, and I'll share more about it later, but this is what a bassoon sounds like.
It sounds so much better if we weren't doing this virtually. It sounds very, very beautiful. But originally, when we started making synthetic bassoon reeds, we actually started with 3D printing bassoon reeds. And that actually had a lot of challenges, mainly because we needed a thinness of the bassoon to be on the nanometer, micrometer scale. And for the 3D printers that we had available at the Makerspace at UT Austin, could only get us at a fidelity of roughly a millimeter, maybe a micrometer, but not to the level that we needed. And that's important because bassoon reeds need to be very thin because they need to be able to like flutter to produce sound or resonance. So because we couldn't get that level of thinness that we needed, we realized quickly that we needed to pivot towards another material. Another thing that was an obstacle of 3D printed bassoon reeds is that bassoonists like to customize their bassoon reeds. And Bridget, I'm sure, has somewhere this giant toolkit that she uses to, okay, she's pointing toward it, to file down her reeds. It's like, if I can explain it, it's like the tools that you use to cut your nails, like you need a filer, you need like some nail polish, you need to clip your nails, like all those tools that you use for your nails, there's something equivalent for a bassoon reed itself. So with 3D printing, you kind of lose that flexibility of being able to file down a 3D printed bassoon reed because it's just too hard. So that's when we realized that we approached Dr. Nathaniel Lind at the Chemical Engineering Department at UT Austin, And he said, well, of course, a 3D printed reed won't produce the same sound as a cane reed, simply because the molecular structure of a polymer, because 3D printers use SLA printing, which is basically like liquefied plastic. Molecularly, they don't have the same structure as something like cane wood, which has a cellular-based structure, which Letty can go much more in depth into. So that's when you propose the process of something called delignification. I realize this is hard to explain and absorb over just me speaking about it, but essentially what we're doing is we take this piece of cane wood, we drop it into a chemical solution that's highly acidic. We strip away some of the carbon molecules that are in this cane reed, and then we replace the carbon molecules that were removed with a polymer. And so essentially this creates a hybrid of carbon and plastic. And that's good because bassoonists can still file it down. It still flutters like a natural cane would, or cane bassoon reed would. And we still retain that level of thinness that we need to produce sound. So I'll go ahead and hand it off to Bridget so she can talk about why it's so important that the bassoonists have to have this about customizability of bassoon reeds.
Absolutely. So something that we have spent a lot of time working on and will continue to is what is the actual need of the market? Is this something that it's a matter of inconsistency of the reed? Every reed is different. And so a lot of the frustration in the bassoon community is that every time you play a different reed, it behaves differently because it's made of this natural material. And reeds are very short-lived. They only last about 3 to 4 weeks if you play on them consistently. And we make our own if you're in school studying bassoon, or you buy handmade reeds if you're learning bassoon. So that is a very expensive process because we've already talked about all the tools that we need to make these, material itself, and the amount of time that goes into making these. The reeds that I start today will be finished probably 2 months from today. It's a very time expensive process and money, and it's just something that results in frustration. So the question is, what can our product address in those frustrations? And we want to make sure we get that need filled. The good news is that this process that we've discovered will make our reeds last longer. It will expand from like 3 to 4 weeks to between 6 months and a year. We're doing some testing on how much we actually are extending the life of these reeds. And making them last longer will inherently save you money. And this process is much cheaper than synthetic reeds that are on the market. There's one other competitor, and it's a $150 reed, and that is very fragile. And so our goal is to make these affordable, long-lasting reeds, particularly for student bassoonists, and then expanding into the professional market. And so we really want to make sure that we address these different needs of different levels of players. And the other important part is that the obstacle is we have a very small market if we're just targeting bassoonists. There's a lot of us, but not necessarily enough to sustain this very large market. So this process is applicable to any reed instrument. And Ali can talk more about that, but that gives us the opportunity to expand our market well beyond just bassoonists. But we decided to start with bassoonists, one, because the opportunity was there, the cost is the highest, and we believe it's the most frustrating market due to that cost and longevity of the reeds.
Yeah, so Zoe talked a little bit about this, but essentially the process we're doing is called delignification. So we're just removing some carbon from wood, and all reeds are made from cane wood. So besides bassoon reeds, we can expand this into like oboe reeds, which are another more expensive reed because like a bassoon reed, they consist of 2 pieces. So they're called like a double reeded instrument. So they kind of have 2 pieces like that. Like you can kind of see with Bridget bringing the reed to the camera. And so we're kind of starting with the hardest case and then working our way to easier reeds. So those are our single reeds if you've ever seen like a saxophone or a clarinet. And what's really cool about this process is we're essentially just using a plastic that you can find in everyday items and filling in little spaces that we remove from the wood. And so what we're using is a safe plastic material to backfill the reed is how we like say it. That's the actual process. And for the actual part where Zoe, you mentioned this, where we're doing the delignification, we're putting it in an acidic solution, but it's not gonna like hurt you. We're using chemicals that are used to like wash vegetables and are approved by like the FDA. So it's like safe to put in your mouth. Of course, it took a while to figure all those steps out. And also like some of the obstacles that went into actually starting up our project and trying to make these bassoon reeds were first, Lizette and Zoe and Bridget had to find a chemist to help them because they found papers on this process, but they'd never really been in a chem lab before, maybe general chemistry their freshman year of undergrad. Because whenever you're going to do something in a lab space, you have to have certain like safety precautions in place and know how to like navigate that area. So that's really where I came in. And so that was a whole process, finding a space. I think it took how many months, Lizette and Zoe? Like almost a year, also because of pandemic issues. Yeah.
So yeah, I think from January to May, we were looking for a lab space, Zoe. I'm pretty sure.
And then May, we found out last minute the lab space we wanted to use was not safe. So then from May to June, we found a lab space and we were frantically trying to get approved for using our respirators because the level of safety that we needed required us to get respirator training. And this isn't just the kind of K or N95s that you see. This is like a full face mask with like 2 hazmat nozzles on the side that you can see.
Yeah, like zombie apocalypse level respirator mask. Because we're using like the stock materials that we use are very concentrated, but they're diluted down for our actual process. So you just have to take all these precautions that you may not think about going into a project initially. And so I think that was a big like learning process for all of us, was like all the steps you have to take that you might not realize going into a business. And then I think one of the other large obstacles for us is the fact that none of us have a business background. So when we started this, it was like, okay, we have something, like we have a market for it. And then we had no idea what to do. And so that's where we really like relied upon like the FoundHER program and other programs that we're a part of on campus to help us like navigate that field, because we had absolutely no idea what was going on. But through this process, I feel like we've gained a lot of knowledge in business. I don't know if anybody else wants to speak to that.
Yeah, like, I mean, we could all personally talk about different challenges or what the most challenging thing was for each of us, if y'all are okay with that. And we can just go back in the same order that we've been doing things. But I would say for me, the most challenging thing is being flexible. Some of our plans that we've had have changed very, very drastically and very quickly. Like the original like goal of this project was just like, it was supposed to be, I was kind of, when I started this, the freshman, it was kind of like what I could have ever imagined. So for me, it was being flexible and learning how to adapt to changes, and especially the business side of things, which is very, very different than engineering. I'm going to pass the virtual mic to Zoe if you want to talk about challenges.
Yes, I think the biggest challenge is time management, which is very interesting because you know, as UT Austin students, you all have like amazing gifts. We kind of are built to time manage. So by time management, I guess it's very hard to carve out time, because certain tasks that you think don't take as much time take up 3 times a lot of times. So a lot of times I know we would like set a goal, and it's just so hard to like balance your student life, your work life, and then your Fermata Reads life, and having all these 3 hats just like circling and cycling all at once. I think that's one of the biggest challenges. Is a lot of times we get frustrated. I feel like, oh, I want to go faster, but we can't because we just don't have enough time in the day. So I think that's a big challenge, is just not having enough time in the day. Go ahead, Bridget, take it away.
Yeah, for me, it's definitely figuring out the order of events, and what comes first is the patenting, the incorporation, research and development. I know I really wanted the product to be perfect before we did anything. However, realistically, there's a lot of these steps that have to happen at the same time and in what order. So figuring that out is something that was difficult, and we're still working on too.
Yeah, that was one of the hardest parts for me, is because we had a prototype, but I wanted it to be perfect, because as like scientists, engineers, chemists, we always try to optimize what we make more and more and more. So it's hard to find the point where it's like, okay, time to start thinking about this as something you can take outside of the lab setting. And that was something that was kind of hard for us because it's like, okay, like, yeah, it works, but it's not perfect yet. And we were talking to, I think, Van Truscott at Texas Innovation Center. And she talked about like, no, you have a product, you need to put it out there. And she said that's something that like women in business do often, is they kind of like wait and sit on the back end. Whereas like guys and men often like go forward and like take the risk. So she was like, don't be cautious, like go for it. Like you don't have time to be cautious. You have a product, it works, you need to get it out there and like start now with patenting it, like speaking to attorneys. So it's like a lot of things were happening simultaneously. So you have like the business side, but also research and development and market research. So there's a lot going on all at once. And it's definitely a huge time commitment, but also a lot of fun.
That's been the most thing, is just seeing all of us connect over all these different fields, and just that part has been actually the most interesting part to me. So, but I remember that it says that like, you know, being a woman in business, like do you think there's any challenges that you've encountered specifically as a woman in business? I remember like Shannon brought that up, or I don't know. Do you have any ideas, Zoe?
Yes. Problems. I will say for now, UT Austin has been and Georgia Tech have been a very protected community, in that there hasn't been, in my experience at least, and from other women, a lot of microaggressions or aggression against women. There's something fancy out there, if you haven't heard of it, it's called Title IX. And I feel that Title IX really protects students, graduate students, faculty members, and postdocs against these kind of sexual harassments that you might see. Probably moving forward, if we happen to go outside of the university ecosystem where Title IX does not exist, it might be possible that we might see some of that. I don't know. Personally, I have not. I don't know about you, Bridget or Allie, if you have seen that.
I don't think I've seen too many like issues with being a woman in business through UT, because like you said, we have such great programs here that support women in business. And I also think we've been connected with attorneys through actually women in business on campus here. And that's kind of been our whole network, is very supportive of women in business here. So I don't think we've faced too much of a struggle as being women in business. But a lot of what I've seen like talked about like women in business, the fact of us being like more cautious and less likely to take risk, I think I noticed with all of us consistently. And so it's very hard for me to overcome that, because I want it to be perfect. And I'm like, oh, I don't like to take risk. I'm a cautious person, but you kind of have to do that in business and be uncomfortable.
Yeah, speaking of business, we actually heard back from one of our corporate attorneys, and Fermata Reads has officially been incorporated in Delaware. So that has all been very exciting news for us as well. So yeah, it's been a very exciting process. And I think the last thing I would like to address is, any tips you would give to people starting out. I think that's always a good part. And then maybe the last thing we could tackle is next steps for Fermata and what to look out for. Yes. So yeah, personally for business tips, or I don't know, any advice that I would give to someone starting out is I would just say to try, because there's so much resources, and UT has been extremely supportive of all of us. But I think if you have an idea and it's very compelling and you believe in it, I think if you just try and you just try to talk to someone about it, it can have a much bigger impact than you could ever imagine. And I'd say that's been my piece of advice. Zoe, do you have any tips you would give?
Yeah, I would say be very transparent and very intentional with the actions that you want to do. So I know, like, I've been a lot of student teams before, and it happens commonly for student teams to like pursue something. It's like, oh yes, let's design this Hyperloop system or this rocket system. But what happens is that they don't commit to it. And so nothing actually happens or becomes a result of it. There's a clear need for new rocket systems and Hyperloop technology. But because they prioritize like studies or tests over it, nothing happens. So I would say, if you really believe it, like Lizette says, and sometimes, not all ideas sound the coolest. I will admit, Bassoon Reads did not sound cool at the time. I have thus changed my mind. But I would say because of these, I was committed and I wanted to actually see this happen. Things actually happen. So be intentional. And if and if an opportunity comes not in the way that you want, but in a way that you need, commit to it and don't say no. Go ahead, Bridget.
I'd say, as myself, I'm a perfectionist who likes to play it safe. So I'd encourage you to be brave and don't undersell what you're doing. Just sell yourself and be proud of what you're doing. And I'll say Fermata is fortunate to have a lot of great mentorship in all departments from many different angles. And that advice is so valuable and so helpful. So making those connections and reaching out, it has done wonderful things.
Mine's kind of a combination of what we've all said, but like if you see an opportunity, go for it, even if it makes you uncomfortable, because, you know, I'm a chemist, so I figured I'd be stuck in a lab and I wouldn't have to socialize with people for the rest of my life. And then I realized that I actually did enjoy like the business side of things and combining that and science. And so I've been really grateful for this opportunity to be a part of Fermata, because it's made me explore their interest and actually realize a different career goal for myself. So you just try it, do what makes you uncomfortable. Also, like what Zoe was says, you can have a great idea, but if you don't put any time or effort behind it, it's never going to happen. And you have this great like institution where you have some of the leading like minds in the state, in the world, probably. Like go ask them for help. Like you'd be surprised. Everyone we've approached has talked to us and helped us. So really like reach out, because this is your time while you're on campus to use all those resources and not have to pay for them. So very helpful when you're starting a business.
All very good advice, people. I think this is, I think we're gonna finally tackle probably like our last bullet point, which is you know, talking about next steps with Fermata. I can talk a little bit about it, and any of y'all feel free to jump on or add to what I'm just gonna say. I think for Fermata, I drew a diagram with Van, but it's kind of, we approach things kind of in a three-pronged situation. So we have the finance business arm, we have the R&D arm, and then lastly we kind of have like, I would say like the legal branch, kind of just pursuing things with, you know, lawyers. Let me know if I'm missing one. But in terms of R&D, our prototype is completely operational. Right now, what we're trying to do is, like Bridget and Ali brought up, you're trying to refine it for sure. And we're trying to make it easier for the player and the musician to make that read by hand. And then as far as the legal side goes, we are planning to pursue a provisional patent for our prototype. And then lastly, for financial needs, yeah, I think the main thing is fall. For everyone who is not in the know, fall is prime pitch season. Lots and lots of grants, startups, like pitches, like everything opens up in the fall. And it kind of like winds down a bit in spring as graduation happens. So if you are interested in starting a company or you're interested in the founder program, I would highly recommend mobilizing in the fall. There's just so much opportunity at UT, and there's a lot more grants out there than even I could have ever imagined. So if Zoe, Bridget, Ali, if you have anything to add to future Fermata, let me know.
I would just say starting a company is expensive, especially if you want to get a patent, because we had no idea going in, because Lizette and Zoe and Bridget got a grant through the music school. And it was like, oh, we want to patent this. And then it turns out that a patent is going to cost you like 7 to 12 grand. So like it adds up fast. So you have to be doing these pitch competitions very proactively once you start a startup or a business, because, you know, if you're an undergraduate or a grad student, you're currently not making the big bucks and don't have a lot of money to put into a company. So again, it goes back to this like tip of take advantage of the resources you have available to you.
I think that's everything. We can follow up with Q&A. I'm sure you all have questions of your own to ask us. If not, we won't leave the meeting until at least five questions are asked.
I have a couple questions.
Yeah.
What have been 1 to 2 of your proudest moments in creating your business?
Proudest moments.
I would say when we won our first grant, Liz.
Is that yours?
Well, I mean, because that's when you know. Well, I think so. After when we won the Celluloid grant from TIC.
Okay,
Or,
that's always proudest moment. I
one
would
of
say
them.
when we got the full range, because I remember we were prototyping it on old wood to save expenses, and it was kind of sounding a little like Bridget could talk about that. But when we did the prototype on new wood and we saw the huge change in results, that's when I like, it was like a light bulb. It was like, oh my goodness, it actually works. All these years of effort and it works. So that was my proudest moment.
I have two moments. One similar to Lizette was when I'm lucky I get to play on the reeds. So I played it and I was like, wow, I like how that sounds. That was really exciting because there was a few that were not that experience, of course. And I'm excited to see other people starting to play on these reeds as well. And the other moment was today getting our incorporation paperwork and seeing like the official documents. It's like, oh my gosh, we did it. We're a company. So that was an exciting email today.
Yeah, mine was probably when I heard that the prototype that we had made in the lab and spent hours and days on actually worked and got the full like range of the instrument with how like all the notes that it can play. So that was super exciting. And then I think one of my other proudest moments is when we did, I think, our first in-person pitch competition. And we won second place, like an idea to product pitch competition. And like I was just in the audience and Bridget and Zoe were pitching. And it was just like, they did such a great job. And Bridget played the bassoon on stage and it sounded so beautiful. And I was just like, so happy and so proud. And it was like, it's really all come together after like, we've been doing this for like a year and a half now altogether, I think.
Yeah, everyone started at different entry points. So, but yeah, for Allie, it's been a year and a half.
Yeah.
And for Zoe and Bridget and I think we started in fall of 20. Well, actually, I think I started in March of 2020. So it's been a long time coming.
Thank you all for sharing your proudest moments. I have another question for you. What's the best advice you've received along your journey that you would want to share with future entrepreneurs? Maybe it's something you keep coming back to, or just advice that that stuck with you.
For me, it would be what Jan Ryan said. She said, oh, actually, and Dr. Van Truscott, they both said that as women and business leaders, we tend not to project ourselves as well. So it's like, when Jan Ryan first told us that we have to be better about projecting ourselves, like, oh yes, we're gonna have a prototype, this prototype's gonna work, it's gonna make X amount of dollars in X amount of years, and it'll address Y population and A population. I didn't believe her. I thought she was crazy. I was like, what are you talking about? Like, we're engineers, we're great at selling ourselves. What are you saying? And now I understand completely what she means, because whenever you're pitching to pitch competitions and writing grants and proposals, you have to be a visionary and you have to say that this is what I'm dreaming, this is what's going to happen, and it's going to address these needs, and it will happen. And I feel like as women leaders, as we were talking about this, we do have a tendency, I feel like Bridget and Allie were saying, to wait and say, I want this to be perfect. Until I know we're physically a company, until I know we physically have the documents saying that we're a company, then I'll talk about it. But by the time you get there, once you're perfect, it's too late. You already missed the opportunity. The grant proposal deadline already passed. You thought there would be another one and there wasn't, or the teammate you thought who could join in already moved on to the next project. So there's a lot of merit to be said. I mean, that's how Elon Musk sells so many Tesla cars and how SpaceX became real. But you got to actually pitch it and you got to believe in it. And by you being your authentic self, you'll be able to convince that other person to also hop on this dream with you.
I have nothing to add. That was very well said.
I think you covered it, Zoe.
Okay, and then one more question. Can you walk us through the process of applying for a patent? I'm sure most of the people in this room have not had that experience. Can you share what that was like and yeah, your experience with it?
I can talk a little bit about that. We were actually very lucky. We had a head start because of our connection with Texas Innovation Center, or TIC. Dr. Van Truscott, one of our mentors, she actually referred us to one of her colleagues, Tanny Chen, and he is an IP attorney. And that was a huge step up because it's if you don't have connections, it can be very difficult to even get in touch with a lawyer, even have them respond to you. So that's number one, find a lawyer, get a lawyer, have connections. That's number one. And then number two, is what Ali brought up earlier, is that you have to fundraise quite a bit of money. The value of money depends on the complexity of your product. It also depends on where you are trying to get your patent done. I know that like, at least where Tanny's located, I think it's in Boston, the IP scene there is very, very cutthroat. So the expenses are pretty high. It might be different here in Austin. And then after that's all lined up, then there's also paperwork to fill, and you have to file that. And you also have to pay a retainer for your lawyer to help you with the legal language. That was my understanding. Anyone else have anything to add to that?
I can jump in if you want, or you can go ahead, Bridget.
No, you first.
Okay. So I would say like you definitely need an attorney if you're going to file a patent, just because it's honestly like a completely different language, especially for a section of the patent called claims. The way it's written, it does not read like actual English. And so you need their expertise, but you should also like talk through your resources on campus to speak to several different attorneys. So we connected with Tanny out of Boston, and we also talked to attorneys through the FoundHER program, because it's important to get several different opinions. And for anyone who doesn't know, IP stands for intellectual property. So there's attorneys, you need different attorneys for different things. So if you want to be incorporated, that's going to be a different attorney from your IP and patent attorney. So the lawyer fees will add up quick. And for a patent, you want to make sure you're going with someone who does a good job, because you don't want to be in the hole like $5,000 and have gone with an inexperienced attorney and not gotten a good patent. So it's good to speak to several different attorneys and go with your network to see like who you trust.
And two things to be aware of when you're thinking of, before you file a patent, while you're thinking about it. One is who owns the intellectual property. So be careful, especially in the university setting. Just be very aware of lab space, resources, all of that, and who actually owns this idea and that you're trying to patent. And then two is to protect you in the process of filing a patent. There's a thing called the provisional patent. And just to be very aware of timing that, because you don't need the absolute finished product to file the provisional patent. To file the provisional patent, you just you get as close to the product as possible and put all the information you can. But then once that is filed, it protects you while you work to get towards your final product. However, once you file the provisional patent, also that's expense number one, the clock starts. So then you have, I think it's about a year to get to where you're going. So being aware of the timing of it all and planning expenses in that way also. The more of the lawyer work you do yourself, the less you pay for the patent. However, you want to have a good patent because it needs to be protectable, as in like the idea of the patent is if someone does something that uses what you own with that patent, you have to figure out, is your lawyer the one who's filing this legal work, or is it yourself? And you want to make sure that your patent holds up in such a case. So that's a lot of information. But.
No, very well said. Very well said.
Yeah, so a lot of startups will do provisional patents because it gives you a year to get your money together, but also start the patent process because it is a long process. It can take like 5 years to get a patent, just to put some perspective on that. And like another thing I just wanted to quickly mention is if you're starting a company, you want to think about what kind of incorporation should be, because there are different types. So definitely like talk to someone about that before you just file as an LLC, because it might be better for you to be like a C or S corporation, which S corporation usually comes after LLC, I believe, but we filed as a C corporation. So it will depend on what your business is that will work best for you.
3 questions down, 2 more to go.
Thank you so much. Yeah, now we'll open it up to the group here. Feel free to either raise your hand or you can use the reactions and do a hand raise that way. So feel free to ask away.
Sorry, you need that? Okay, I have a question. Is there something important, like what's something important that you learned from pitch competition? Because they sound a little intimidating at first, and maybe like how you navigated through that at first.
I could take this one if that's all right with y'all, and you could add on after me, of course. Advice for pitch competitions. So my first pitch competition was actually a year ago with Kendra Scott Center, and my first pitch was terrible. I talked
It
too
was
fast.
decent. It was good.
It was,
It was
it was
good.
not good. You weren't there, Zoe. But it was really, really fast, and I didn't know how to explain anything, and I was just really, really embarrassed the entire time. But I will say that, like all things, and then last summer I interned and I had to give my final presentation, and I did a really good job with public speaking. So a lot can change just through practice alone. And the biggest key I would recommend to practicing pitch competitions is pitch to everyone and anything. You can pitch to the stuffed animals in your room. You can pitch to your family, your friends. Just keep practicing over and over and over again, because eventually you will know the pitch by heart, and it'll just become natural to you. And then that's number one. And then number two is to talk slow. You always will speed up when you're fast, whether in music, whether in talking. Just go through everything slow. And the last thing I would say is make it so that anyone off the street can understand, because you will know your product inside and out. You will know everything about it. But the average person doesn't know what a bassoon is, right? So just know your audience, and just if you were a random person off the street, could you understand and would you believe what you're pitching? So that's my advice.
I would say definitely make your slides, do your pitch, and then share it with some people who are familiar with pitch competitions, and you will get some amazing advice. Some of what they're looking for in pitch competitions. There's a lot of really great things they want to make sure that they see. And if you have that, people who judge these competitions are great people to ask, like other competitions, not the one you're entering, unless that's an option. And having some solid numbers is very helpful in terms of show that you know your market, what you're going for. And then if there's an ask question of what you're asking for, as in like they say, how much do you need to work on this project? And always round up because you never know.
Do you want to? Okay, go ahead, sorry.
Yeah, I'll go real quick. So everything Lizette and Bridget said, I second 200%. One thing I would add is you have to think like the judge. So you need to think by numbers, I guess, to go a little bit more granular, you have to think, okay, how much is this product going to cost? How much does this product take? How much does it cost to make? How much do I need to make revenue? How many customer surveys have I done? All these business profile things that we didn't think we needed to do because we are engineers, which we've heard nothing about. But this is the business side that we are fighting. So a lot of critical questions that you have to evaluate for milestones of success. And ironically, see this as a good thing. I admit it's intimidating, but by identifying these numbers about, it takes X amount of hours to make a batch process, kind of tells you what goals you need to go towards when you develop your final product. So I would definitely say, think very critically of what the judge wants, and just be very professional about it. And if you don't know the answer, which is going to happen, they will ask you a question you don't know the answer to, simply say like, we don't have those numbers yet, we're still doing our research. And that always works out to be a good answer.
Also, if you don't have the answer to one of their questions, you should redirect them to something you do know the answers to, so it looks like you know what you're talking about. So if they ask you a question about, I don't know, what are your numbers going to be for the fall quarter? You can say, we are researching that. However, I do know XYZ. And then just go on and on and on about what you do know and solidify the point that you know what you're talking about.
Yeah, exactly. The big thing with pitch competitions is you want to show you have a viable company and that you can make money. So you need to prove that you have a market and that you're profitable. If you can't do either of those things, then it's not going to go too well. But overall, with pitching and presentations in general, you just need to practice. And remember, you know what you're talking about. This is what you're spending all of your time on. So really, it can't go too wrong. So just practice. I know I was very shy growing up, and then with time and working on this and also teaching as a grad student, I have no problem getting up in front of people and talking. So practice really does make perfect.
Oh, and make yourself unique. Make yourself unique. I will say, I will say that when Bridget plays bassoon live on stage, we instantly get 10 plus brownie points, because everyone else is developing an app or consulting firm and they tell a story, and here Bridget just plays live music. So use the advantage of your product, the uniqueness of your product.
Yeah, the big thing. Oh, Go ahead, Bridget.
Oh, I'm just gonna, it's really quick, but I'll say also it can be really intimidating to see all these other people showing up with these companies that just look amazing. You're like, oh my gosh. Just know that they're selling themselves, and then just be prepared to also sell yourselves like very well. And don't worry about that internal comparison that you're doing.
Yeah, I was just gonna say a big thing is being engaging, because you want to capture your audience and you want them to want to be a part of your project and to help support you. So just like, you know, when you sit through school presentations and they're really boring and they're talking very monotone, just don't do anything like that.
I think there was another question in the audience.
Yes, I just want to say thank you really quickly. That was super helpful.
I just had a question. Like, do you guys have like a mission statement for your company or like values that you take into each of your business decisions?
Motto.
Our motto right now is, what is it? Play synthetic, feel organic.
Yeah, you know our company motto. Good job. I would say though, one of our overarching mission statements from the beginning was to increase accessibility to bassoon playing, because bassoon, expensive instrument, reeds, expensive, and it's just an uphill battle from there. Time commitment, costs, lessons, sheet music. So that was one of our biggest mission statements, was to increase accessibility and make it so that more people can learn this instrument. Feel free to add on too.
Yeah, another thread that runs through all of our planning and decisions is this collaboration between arts and STEM fields, and STEAM as we keep calling it.
Theme.
Yes, just totally advocating for this collaboration between departments.
All right. Does anybody else have any additional questions? Okay. Well, if there is nothing else that you want to share, is there anything else you want to share from Outer Reads team?
We have an Instagram and a Facebook page.
Yes,
So
yes.
keep in touch. Please keep in touch and please ask us questions. We're always around. And if you know anyone who plays bassoon or a woodwind instrument, you know who to send them to. So
Yeah, and just thank you for coming.
Yes, thank you for coming.
Yes,
Thank you to
okay.
KSLE for having us here today.
Thank you all. Thank you to the four of you for joining and for sharing your story and for being so vulnerable with us. We are so grateful. And thank you to everyone for showing up and for listening and engaging. If you want to stay in touch with us at WELI, you can click this link, and it's kind of like a link tree. So there's a lot of different places to connect with us. And if you want to learn more about the FoundHER program, you can head there as well. Applications will start opening in the fall semester. Well,
can you save the recording as well?
Yeah. What if one of you could save the recording and send me the stats, that would be amazing.
Sounds good.
Okay, great. Well, thank you everyone for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Bye.
Thank you.